Before we begin this amazing story, we would love for you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to get notified when we drop new stories. Now enjoy. Kyoma hadn't been sleeping well. She wouldn't admit it out loud, but every time she closed her eyes lately, her body stayed tense. Like something was coming. Something she couldn't name yet. The safe house had grown in the past few months. What started as a cramped home with 6 girls now held nearly 20. Rooms had been added. A makeshift school space built. A small medical shed stood in the back, and volunteers rotated in from all over Anambra, Enugu, and sometimes even from Abuja. But for all the growth, something about the air felt different now. It was too still. Too watchful. Like someone was always listening. She stepped out onto the veranda with her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, scanning the compound. The morning sun hadn't yet settled in, and most of the girls were still asleep. Only Nonso, already crouched by the generator house, was awake, fiddling with wires like always. "Any luck?" she asked. He looked up. "If I told you this thing was cursed, would you believe me? I'd believe it's tired of you calling it a thing." They shared a small laugh, but Kyoma's smile faded quickly. Something in her chest wouldn't sit right. Nonso stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "You haven't been sleeping." "I'm fine." He gave her that look again. The one that didn't press but didn't believe her either. "You heard about yesterday, right?" she asked. "The safe house in Nsukka?" She nodded. "Raided. No trace. Not even a scream." Nonso's jaw tightened. "Someone gave them the address." "That's what I'm thinking." Kyoma had always known this day would come. The bigger they got, the more enemies they attracted. Not just traffickers, politicians, business owners, even people hiding behind titles and power. And now, maybe, someone among them. Inside, the girls were waking. Laughter rose from the hallway. Yuzo Amaka's voice floated through, teasing someone about not brushing their teeth. Amaka walked past without saying a word, same as always. Ada Aura, sketchbook in hand, moved quietly toward the garden. Normal things. Sweet things. Kyoma hated the feeling crawling through her. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps at the front gate. No one was expected. She walked out cautiously, Nonso trailing behind. Outside stood a woman. Tall, in a soft yellow wrapper, with a satchel slung over her shoulder. Her smile was wide, warm, practiced. "Good morning," she said brightly. "My name is Ngozi. I was sent by the Women's Foundation in Owerri. I'm here to volunteer." Kyoma blinked. "We didn't receive any message about you," she said carefully. Ngozi laughed, brushing the sweat from her forehead. I was told it was urgent. They needed someone with counseling background, and I've worked in several shelters before. I came straight from the night bus." She handed over a sealed envelope, stamped, official. Nonso opened it, eyes scanning the note. Everything looked right. But Kyoma didn't feel right. Still, she smiled, extended her hand, and said, "Welcome." That evening, Kyoma sat with Kelechi in the training shed. "She's too smooth," Kelechi said. "I don't trust people who smile too much. She has experience. Real paperwork." Kelechi shrugged. "You've said it before, paperwork can be faked." Kyoma stared at the wall. "I know. That's why we watch. Quietly." And they did. Over the next few days, Ngozi settled in too well. She helped braid the younger girls' hair. She laughed easily, cooked for the whole compound, and shared stories about how she lost her younger cousin to trafficking. The girls loved her. Too much. Ada Aura caught her one night going through the supply room without permission. "I was just organizing," Ngozi said, smiling. "Trying to be helpful." But the next day, a folder from Kyoma's office disappeared. No one could explain how. And when Yuzo Amaka returned from delivering aid to a nearby rescue team, her face was pale. "The family never received anything," she told Kyoma. "And someone warned them not to talk to us." That night, Kyoma didn't sleep at all. She paced her room, heart heavy. Who was playing games with them? And why? As dawn painted the sky, she made a decision. No more pretending. She walked straight into Nonso's room and said, "It's happening. We have a mole." He sat up instantly. "You're sure now?" "Yes. And we're going to catch them before they tear this house apart." At the gate, two girls stood waiting, new rescues brought in from Awaka. One of them clutched a doll made from old fabric. The other had a swollen lip and eyes that wouldn't stop darting around. Kyoma crouched to their level and said softly, "You're safe here." But even as she said the words, her heart whispered, "For how long?" Inside the house, Ngozi stirred tea with a soft hum, smiling at the girls around her like a mother hen. And far out, beyond the walls, a message was being typed on a phone. Sent. Delivered. Ghost, they don't suspect me yet. Move in soon. The traitor was already inside. And the clock had begun to tick. The rain had started long before midnight, tapping against the zinc rooftops like careful fingers. Inside the safe house, most of the girls were curled in bed, breathing deep, their dreams finally unbothered for now. But not Kyoma. She stood by the window in her room, her arms folded tightly over her chest, watching shadows move with each flash of lightning. Ngozi's laughter still echoed faintly in her ears from earlier that evening. Too sweet. Too light. Like someone with nothing to hide. That was exactly what bothered her. Nonso had already begun setting up silent surveillance in the hallway. Just 3 cameras, one near the storage room, one in the medical shed, and one inside the main office. Nothing that could draw attention yet. They couldn't afford panic. Not among the girls, and definitely not among the staff. In the dim corridor, Ada Aura walked barefoot, her sketchbook pressed tightly against her chest. She paused in front of Kyoma's door, hesitant, before knocking twice. Kyoma opened gently. "I can't sleep," Ada Aura whispered. "Can I sit?" She nodded. Ada Aura stepped in and sat by the corner, opening her sketchbook with hands that trembled slightly. "I drew something," she said. "From memory." She turned the page and showed Kyoma. It was Ngozi. Standing by the gate, her back turned, but in her hand, half hidden, was a phone. And on the phone screen was a contact name. One word. Ghost. Kyoma's breath caught. "You saw this." "I didn't want to say anything until I was sure." Kyoma took the sketchbook gently, studying every detail. Ada Aura had an artist's eye. She didn't miss things. The phone. The stance. The angle. All of it aligned with her unease. They were close. Too close. The next morning, Kyoma called a quiet meeting in the backyard. Only Nonso, Kelechi, Yuzo Amaka, and Ada Aura were present. Rain had left the grass soaked, and their slippers squelched lightly underfoot. "We're being watched," Kyoma began. "And someone inside this compound is feeding our enemies." Everyone stayed silent. Then she pulled out the sketchbook and opened to the page. It passed from hand to hand. Yuzo Amaka swallowed hard. "Ngozi." Nonso nodded. "I knew something didn't add up." But Kelechi shook his head slowly. "Or someone is making her look guilty. Let's not jump." Kyoma agreed. That was why they were watching and not accusing. "She'll slip," Kyoma said. "Traitors always do." They returned to normal routines. The girls were taken to lessons. Laundry was washed. Rice and beans boiled over the kitchen stove, and Ngozi, cheerful as ever, served food with her signature charm. She touched shoulders when she laughed. She always said "my dear." She hummed old gospel songs. And then, one evening, a call came in from the Abakaliki unit. 2 of their girls had vanished. There was no sign of forced entry. The safe house was intact. But the door had been unlocked from the inside. Kyoma stared at the report on her table, her stomach turning. It wasn't just this house anymore. Someone was giving routes. Schedules. Inside knowledge. That night, Kyoma gave Nonso one order: Activate voice tracking. They didn't need cameras anymore. They needed voices. By midnight, the device hidden near the central office caught something. Footsteps. A door creaking. Papers shifting. Then Ngozi's voice, soft, calm. She was speaking in Igbo. Fast, careful. She's planning to move them in 3 days. The one called Uzoamaka is too alert. I need her removed from duty. Silence. Then, yes. They still trust me. Kyoma leaned back from the speaker like someone had slapped her. No more guessing. It was real. Ngozi was ghost. But she wasn't alone. She was working with someone else, someone who had power to remove people like Uzoamaka from duty. That meant someone outside was still pulling strings. This network wasn't just trafficking girls. They were planting people inside protection spaces, making the rescues themselves a trap. By morning, Kyoma's eyes were bloodshot. Her voice didn't shake when she called Uzoamaka and whispered, "You're not on duty today. Hide. Listen." Later that afternoon, Kyoma staged a meeting. All volunteers were called. Ngozi sat with her usual glow, even helping one of the new girls with her head wrap. Kyoma stood and smiled. "We had a breach last night. Minor, but it confirms what I feared." She let her words fall heavy. Every face tightened. Ngozi didn't blink. Kyoma looked straight at her. "There's a traitor among us. And we've found them." Ngozi tilted her head slightly, that same soft expression. "Oh, we have recordings. Evidence. Names." Now, her smile faltered. Just slightly. Kyoma stepped forward. "Whoever is doing this, you're not just betraying me. You're betraying 22 girls who were promised safety." The room was silent. Nonso walked in with a small speaker and placed it on the table. Kyoma hit play. Ngozi's voice filled the room. "She's planning to move them in 3 days." Every pair of eyes swung to her. Ngozi stood up slowly, the mask finally slipping. And then, she ran. Straight through the back door, past the garden, into the trees. Kelechi bolted after her. But she was fast. Too fast. By the time he reached the outer fence, all that was left behind was her scarf caught on a nail and the echo of her footsteps vanishing into the woods. She was gone. But now, they had a voice. A name. And a war that had just become personal. Kyoma stood at the edge of the compound, eyes scanning the tree line. "She knows we're coming," she said quietly. Nonso came up behind her. "What now?" Kyoma's voice was like steel. "We don't wait anymore. We dig. We trace every name. We burn their system from inside out." Far away, in a dark room, Ngozi pulled off her wrapper and reached for a second phone. A voice answered. "Male. Cold. You failed." Ngozi smiled bitterly. "I just made her angry. And now she's exactly where we want her." By morning, the house was quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that sinks into people's skin. The kind that made even laughter feel like noise in the wrong place. Ngozi had vanished into the night, but her shadow remained, stretched across every corner of the safe house like a warning. Kyoma stood at the edge of the compound wall, fingers pressed against the old cement, her eyes fixed on the tree line beyond the fence. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But inside, her thoughts tore through her mind like a flood. They had let a traitor live among them. Eat with them. Sleep under the same roof. She had known the girls' names. Their pasts. Their triggers. And she had used all of it like a weapon. Kyoma had trained herself to be calm, steady, never ruled by emotion. But this betrayal. It burned like hot oil on bare skin. Nonso appeared behind her, holding a notebook and 2 phones. "Morning sweep's done. Everyone's accounted for. No signs of damage. No more missing files." "Good," Kyoma said, voice low. "I checked the generator house." She left a tracker under the fuel tank. Tiny device. Had to use the flashlight to spot it. Kyoma turned, face hard. We're being hunted. Nonso nodded. And we just lit a torch in the dark. They walked back toward the building. As they neared the back door, Kelechi came out, breathless. I traced the signal from the tracker. Kayoma stopped. Kelechi pulled out a folded paper from his back pocket and spread it on the table near the outdoor sink. A map. Red marks. Circles. It's coming from a warehouse compound in Nobi, he said. South End. Not far from that abandoned cocoa depot. Kayoma's eyes narrowed. What kind of place is it? Looks like storage on paper. But the owner doesn't exist. The documents lead nowhere. Shell names. Just like the one we found behind the raid in Nsukka. Nonso leaned in. Then that's where she went. Kelechi nodded. Or where she's leading us. The next day, Kayoma called a closed-door meeting with her most trusted circle. The old safe house staff, those who'd been there before Ngozi came. No new volunteers. No girls. She stood in front of them, quiet for a moment, then spoke. This is no longer just a rescue operation. This is war. No one interrupted. We're not just up against traffickers anymore. We're fighting a system. A network that plants spies inside shelters. People who look like helpers but are informants. The kind of people who smile while they feed children, and then sell those same children behind our backs. She turned slowly, meeting every eye in the room. This is personal now. They spent the next 3 days preparing. Kayoma pulled out all the background checks, even rescreened old workers. Yuzo Amaka and Ada Ora began drawing connection maps. Who had been where, who brought in who. Nonso rigged a temporary surveillance net across the outer perimeter. But it was Kelechi who cracked the next code. He'd been sitting in the old shed, staring at Ngozi's handwriting from the intake logs. Something about it bugged him. He flipped through the pages again. Then he saw it. The dates. She had entered arrival dates for girls she hadn't even met yet. 3 names. 3 girls who hadn't even arrived at the safe house during her week of volunteering. But their names and arrival times were already in her log. He ran to Kayoma's office with the file. She knew they were coming before they got here. Kayoma stared at the paper. That means she wasn't just a spy, she said. She was the one assigning victims. That night, Kayoma sat on the roof with Nonso. A quiet place to think. Below, the girls danced to a small speaker in the corner yard. No one knew what had almost happened. And Kayoma wanted it to stay that way, for now. I want to go to Nobi, she said suddenly. Nonso glanced at her. You're not serious. I'm dead serious. You're too visible. Too known. If something goes wrong, I'd rather it happen to me than one of the girls. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, I'll drive. Kayoma looked at him. I'm not letting you go alone, he added. The next day, they left just before sunrise. Unmarked car. No phones. No contact with the safe house. The warehouse was worse than they expected. Overgrown weeds curled up around rusted iron gates. A faded banner with the word storage and distribution company hung crookedly on the wall. From the outside, it looked dead. Inside, it was a maze. Rooms with no light. Empty crates. Footprints in the dust. But deeper inside, beyond a locked door, they found the real face of the place. A control room. Computers. Monitors. Files. Names. Ages. Destinations. Girls from the safe house. Kayoma scanned through the folder marked cleared for pickup. Her hand trembled. Adeora's name was there. Yuzo Amaka too. Even a marker. She felt sick. Nonso was already checking the digital logs when he froze. Kayoma, he said. Look at this. She moved closer. It was a chat log. From the system's main screen. One message repeated 3 times. Kayoma's next. A camera feed popped up. A live one. It was their safe house gate. Someone was watching them. Live. Kayoma spun around. They're planning something now. They ran. They didn't look back. Back at the house, Adaora sat drawing in the garden. Something about the trees made her feel calm. But her pencil stopped moving when she saw a van pull up. No one had been scheduled to visit. The door slid open. 2 men stepped out. Not government. Not rescue team. Their eyes scanned the compound like they were searching. Kayoma's voice came through on Kelechi's phone only minutes later, breathless. They're coming for the girls. Right now. Kelechi didn't wait. He hit the alarm. Inside, the girls were rushed into the back bunkers. Steel doors slammed shut. The compound locked down. Yuzo Amaka stood guard by the gate, a shovel in one hand. Kelechi stepped beside her. The men at the gate didn't expect resistance. But they weren't getting in. Not this time. By the time Kayoma and Nonso arrived, the van was already gone. No harm done. But the message was clear. They weren't safe anymore. And the enemy wasn't finished. They wanted Kayoma. They wanted the house. But most of all, they wanted the mission to fail. Kayoma looked around at the scared faces peeking from the windows. She raised her voice so all of them could hear. No one is going anywhere. This house will not fall. Not on her watch. The wind picked up just as dusk slipped over the safe house. Not the kind of wind that cooled skin or carried the smell of rain, but the kind that whispered through trees and made doors creak. Something was shifting. Not just in the air, but deep within the walls of the compound. Everyone could feel it. Even the girls, who used to laugh freely in the evenings, now spoke in hushed voices, always glancing over their shoulders like they expected something to crawl out of the shadows. Kayoma stood alone in the watchroom, hands folded behind her. Her eyes weren't just fixed on the gate anymore. They were on the trees beyond it, the ridges in the ground, the shape of the leaves. Her heart didn't rest, and her sleep came in thin, jagged slices. Everything felt wrong. Ngozi was gone, but her fingerprints remained. On the bedsheets she helped fold. On the spoons she passed around during lunch. On the girls who still woke up screaming because her voice haunted their dreams. She wasn't just a traitor, they had trusted her. They had let her in. And Kayoma hadn't seen it coming. Down in the basement, Nonso and Kelechi were working on tracing the systems they found at the warehouse. The files had led them to a larger network, coded messages, unnamed bank accounts, and most frighteningly, a pattern. Every few weeks, a new shelter was compromised. Quietly. Discreetly. Sometimes the house was found empty. Other times, only 1 or 2 girls would disappear, vanished without any trace, as though they'd never existed. They're testing the fences, Nonso muttered, fingers moving across the keyboard. Probing. Seeing which safe houses will fall. Kayoma turned from the window. We won't fall. Kelechi, seated on the floor beside a stack of folders, looked up. We need to stop thinking like we're just playing defense. They're 10 steps ahead. We can't keep waiting for them to strike. Kayoma nodded slowly. Then we make the next move. But how? Adeora's voice came from behind. She stood at the doorway, clutching her sketchbook tightly. They're hidden. They're rich. They have people everywhere. We don't even know what they want. Kayoma's eyes darkened. They want to break the system from inside. And they're starting with us. That evening, Kayoma gathered her core team again, Nonso, Yuzo Amaka, Kelechi, Adaora, and Mema Ifema, the cook who'd seen more than she let on. They sat in the kitchen, the walls dimly lit by one small lantern. The generator was off to conserve fuel. Kayoma unfolded a rough hand-drawn map of the region. We know the warehouse isn't the only site, she said. There's more. That's how Ngozi moved. She had drop zones, fake safe spaces, even decoy victims. If we can find just one more of those sites, we can track the pattern. Kelechi leaned in. So what's the plan? Kayoma exhaled. We bait them. Everyone stared. I'll leak fake information. Say we're transferring 2 girls to a new safe house in Enugu. I'll make it seem like it's low security. Easy target. They'll bite, Nonso said. They always do. Uzoamaka frowned. But what if they follow through? What if they try to snatch the girls? Kyoma didn't blink. There will be no girls. Only us. And we'll be ready. The next day was a flurry of silent movements. No announcements. No loud conversations. The girls were kept unaware. Only the senior team knew what was going on. Fake documents were drawn. A fake van was prepared. 2 staff volunteers posed as victims, dressed in casual clothes, heads down. They would travel with Nonso and Kyoma hidden in plain sight. That night, just after 10 p.m., the van rolled out. Kyoma sat in the front seat, heart steady, fingers resting near the small transmitter they'd hidden under the dashboard. Back at the house, Kelechi monitored the route via drone. Mimar Ifema watched the gate, armed with nothing but a long pestle and a stare that could shatter stone. Uzoamaka stayed with the girls. By 11:42 p.m., the van had reached the halfway point between Nsukka and Enugu. A narrow stretch of road. Thick forest on both sides. Then it happened. Headlights flashed once in the rearview mirror. Nonso glanced back. They're here. Kyoma didn't move. Stick to the script. The van turned off onto a smaller road, one that led to a fake safe house they had set up just for this moment. The following car didn't hesitate. They followed. By the time the van rolled to a stop in front of the decoy building, Kyoma and the others were already in place. The fake victims were moved inside. The cameras were rolling. And the hunters came out. 2 cars. 4 men in dark clothes. No words. No warning. They approached the house with the silence of people who had done this before. Kyoma waited until the first one reached the door. Then she hit the trigger. Floodlights. Sirens. And from the trees, Nonso and 3 volunteers emerged with makeshift weapons. The men froze. Then ran. But this time, they weren't fast enough. One of them tripped. Nonso tackled him. Kyoma came up behind with a rope. 10 minutes later, one of the men was tied up in the back of the van, shouting curses in a language that had no power in that moment. Kyoma leaned over. Who sent you? He spat. She stepped back, jaw tight. He won't talk yet, Nonso said. But he will, Kyoma answered. They drove straight back to the house, no stops, no talking. At dawn, the man was locked in the shed. Not tortured. Not threatened. Just left alone with silence and time. By midday, he cracked. He called himself Okadigbo, the man whispered. The one in charge. But no one sees him. He moves people like pieces on a board. We only get instructions. Kyoma wrote every word down. Where is he? A long pause. There's a place, the man said. Not a warehouse. It's cleaner. Looks like an NGO office. Legit. They even hang photos of rescued girls on the wall. But inside it's a market. A rich man's market. Kyoma's stomach turned. A market. 4 girls. That night, while the girls slept peacefully under mosquito nets and dim nightlights, Kyoma stood on the roof again, eyes scanning the stars. She knew it now. They weren't just dealing with traffickers. They were dealing with an empire. And it was time to burn it down. It rained through the night, hard, angry rain that slammed against the windows of the safe house like fists. The kind of rain that didn't ask permission to fall. Inside, the walls hummed with tension. The girls were asleep, but the team was wide awake. The raid had changed everything. What they had thought was a small ring was now something deeper, darker, and older than they could have imagined. A system with clean front doors and blood behind the walls. Kyoma didn't sleep. She sat in the office, a cup of black coffee growing cold in her hands. A dusty file lay open in front of her, photos of missing girls from across the southeast. Some of them had been reported. Others had simply disappeared. No noise. No witnesses. No search. Kyoma circled 3 of the faces. The pattern was becoming clearer. They were all rescued once. And then re-trafficked. Someone was recycling victims. At first, she didn't notice Nonso standing in the doorway. "You're burning yourself out." "I can't stop," she said, eyes still on the pictures. "They keep slipping through." He walked in and sat across from her. "We have a name now. Okadigbo. A location. A fake NGO front. That's more than we had last week." "It's not enough," she whispered. "Not until every girl is safe." Nonso leaned back. "Then let's get what we need." They set a plan in motion. No more reacting. No more defense. This time, they would take the fight to the source. Kelechi had traced the conversation logs from the captured agent. The location he mentioned, a registered organization under the name Cheta Foundation, sat comfortably in the heart of Awaka, just a few streets away from the government liaison office. A perfect disguise. Children's paintings on the walls. A plaque outside declaring it a beacon of hope for the forgotten. But Kyoma had seen enough beacons built on blood. The plan was risky. Too risky for anyone else to handle. She would go in as a donor, someone wealthy, curious, interested in making a difference. The same way these monsters hunted their prey. She'd use charm as her weapon, lies as her shield. "I'm going alone," she said the next morning. Nonso slammed the table. "You're not." "I have to," she replied. "If they see you, it's over. You're too recognizable." Uzoamaka folded her arms. "Then we go in separately. You'll have eyes. You won't be blind." Kyoma hesitated, but nodded. "One person at a time. I'll make contact. If I don't come out in 30 minutes, go in." She wore a simple dress. No jewelry. Just a woven handbag and a business card marked Kyoma Ease, Director, Ezin Children's Trust. A name that didn't exist. Yet. Nonso waited across the street, pretending to read a newspaper by a pepper soup joint. Kelechi monitored the hidden microphone from a van parked behind a tailor shop. Ada Ora, dressed as a young mother, sat under a tree pretending to breastfeed a doll. Kyoma walked through the front door. The receptionist was warm, her smile trained. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Ncheta Foundation. How may we help you today?" Kyoma returned the smile, soft and curious. "I run a small charity group. We help with reintegration programs for girls in transit. A friend of mine mentioned your foundation. Said you do incredible work." The woman's eyes brightened. "Ah yes, we do our best. We focus on long-term care, healing, rebuilding, reuniting with families." "Do you do field work?" Kyoma asked gently. "Because I'm looking for partners who are bold enough to work in places others avoid." The receptionist nodded, then picked up the landline. "Let me connect you with Mr. Charles. He's our program coordinator." Minutes later, a man in a clean-cut suit stepped out. He looked kind. Too kind. Like a teacher or a gentle uncle. His handshake was firm. His perfume expensive but subtle. "Madam Kyoma, I'm Charles. You're most welcome. Please, follow me." The hallway was clean. Too clean. White tiles. Framed photos of smiling girls holding backpacks. Quotes about healing. Empowerment. Safety. But behind the eyes in the photographs, Kyoma could see the lie. Charles led her into a cool office with 2 armchairs and a small fridge. He offered her juice. She declined. "I'm fascinated by what you do here," she said. "Well, it's God's work," he replied with a humble laugh. "The girls come in broken. Our goal is to remind them they are still valuable. Still wanted." Kyoma smiled faintly. "Do you work with transfer centers?" His eyes flicked toward the door. "Sometimes. Discreetly. Some organizations don't want attention." She leaned in slightly. "Discretion is why I'm here." Charles studied her for a beat. What kind of help do you want to give? I want access. Quiet access. Force selection. Partnership. A pipeline. He didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Instead, he nodded once, slowly. Then you'll need to meet the director. Kayoma's pulse quickened. When? I'll make a call. He doesn't meet just anyone. But I think he'll want to see you. She gave a slow smile. I think so too. He stepped out. Kayoma leaned forward, whispering into her collar. They're biting. In the van, Kelechi grinned. Let's go. But suddenly, Kayoma stiffened. The door opened again, but it wasn't Charles. It was a tall man in all black. Scar near his left ear. Eyes that didn't blink. He shut the door behind him. Kayoma stood slowly. You're not Charles. No, he said. But I've heard of you. Her heart thudded once, loud. Kayoma ease. Not your real name. Real name's been on our list for years. Silence stretched between them. Then she smiled, too calmly. If I'm on your list, you already know what happens next. The man stepped closer. You're either very brave or very foolish. I'm neither, she said. I'm just tired of watching girls disappear while men like you hide behind desks. From outside, Nonso's voice buzzed in Kelechi's ear. It's been 30 minutes. Go, Kelechi said. Now. As the man reached into his coat, Kayoma kicked the table between them, sending the chair crashing into his legs. She grabbed the lamp, swung, and ducked as he lunged. The door burst open. Nonso, Kelechi, and 2 plainclothes volunteers swarmed the office. The man tried to run, but Yuzo Amaka was already at the front gate, blocking the exit. They caught him. But Charles was gone. The receptionist gone. The building, empty. In the fake office files, they found names. A few routes. A coded calendar. But more than anything, they found silence. A silence full of ghosts. That night, Kayoma sat at the front porch, shoes off, legs stretched. She looked older than she did yesterday. Not tired. Just hardened. Adaora brought her a small plate of yam porridge. She didn't touch it. Are you okay? The girl asked. Kayoma looked at her for a long time. No. And that's the point. Adaora sat down beside her. They said nothing more. But something was clear in that silence. The war had officially begun. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still soft with mud, and the air carried that sharp, heavy scent that always lingered after a storm, like the world had just cried and didn't know what to do with itself. Inside the safe house, everything felt louder, footsteps echoed more, doors creaked deeper, even whispers seemed to stretch. It wasn't the house that had changed, it was the people in it. Ever since the mission at the fake NGO, everyone had been different. Kayoma walked slowly through the main hallway. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore, it was thick with unspoken things. The kind of silence that meant the room had seen too much. She paused outside the art room. Inside, Adaora was alone, sitting on the floor, the corner of her mouth smudged with charcoal. She was drawing again, but the lines were different now. No sunshine, no butterflies. Her pencil scratched dark strokes across the paper, circles inside squares, sharp edges cutting into a girl's eyes. Kayoma knocked gently on the doorframe. Adaora didn't look up. I drew him. Who? The man you fought. Her voice was so low it almost disappeared. Kayoma stepped closer. You saw him? I saw his eyes. Just his eyes. But it was enough. Kayoma crouched down beside her and looked at the drawing. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Hollow eyes, one brow higher than the other, a twisted scar along the jawline that the real man hadn't had, but the fear he left in his wake had turned into that scar. Adaora had drawn what it felt like to see him. Not just what he looked like. We'll catch him, Kayoma said quietly. Adaora shook her head. They always come back. Kayoma looked at the girl beside her, and she saw it. Not weakness, not fear, but something more dangerous. A seed of numbness. She couldn't let that grow. She rose slowly. Come. There's something I want you to see. Downstairs, in a locked room behind the kitchen pantry, Nonso and Kelechi were working on a wall full of photos. It looked like a crime board, string connecting names, maps of old raid sites, a flowchart of shell companies. But the center of the board now had a name. Okadigbo. Beside the name, 4 photos. None confirmed. All blurry. Surveillance. Snapshots. The kind of images you couldn't take unless you were watching someone who didn't want to be seen. As Ada Aura stepped into the room, her eyes widened. Kyoma pointed to the board. This is what we're fighting. Ada Aura stared. Kelechi stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. See this section here? These names are survivors. Girls who escaped. Some came here. Others, we're still trying to reach. And these? Ada Aura pointed to a red string that connected to a cluster of accounts and buildings. Money trails, Nonso said. Every time they move a girl, they move money. The only thing these people worship is cash. Ada Aura nodded slowly. So what's the plan? Kyoma walked over to the other side of the room. We have a new lead. It came from the phone we recovered. It pinged one particular location over and over again. A private estate. High walls. Hidden cameras. 2 exits. It's registered under a fake company, but we checked. The real owner is Okadigbo's cousin. Nonso chimed in. We're going there. Tonight. Ada Aura looked at Kyoma. Are you bringing me? No. Kyoma's voice was firm. You're brave, Ada Aura. But this next part isn't for you yet. Ada Aura didn't argue. She just turned and walked out. But her shoulders were straight. She understood now. That night, Kyoma, Nonso, Kelechi, and 2 volunteers, Abuka and Amaka, headed out. No uniforms. No sirens. Just quiet clothes and a mission. The estate was far from town. Deep inside a gated zone that only the wealthy or the powerful could afford. They parked a few streets away and moved on foot, using shadows and shortcuts through half-built compounds. From a hill, they spotted it. The estate had tall gates, stone walls, and cameras hidden in electric lamp poles. A dog barked once. Then silence again. We won't get through the front, Kelechi whispered. We're not meant to, Kyoma replied. They went around the back, climbing a wall near an old water tank. Once inside, they split into 2 groups. Kyoma and Abuka took the left, where the servant quarters were dark and empty. Nonso, Amaka, and Kelechi moved toward the main house. Inside the estate, something was off. It was too quiet. No music. No generators. Even the dogs were gone. Kyoma raised her hand. Trap. Abuka nodded. Then let's walk into it like we know it's there. In the main house, Nonso found the study. It was locked, but Amaka had already started picking the lock. It clicked open. Inside, files. Laptops. Memory cards. And something worse. Photos. Of girls. 2 young. Smiling. Crying. Bound. Kelechi's hands trembled. Then they heard it. The click of a gun behind them. They turned. Okadigbo stood in the doorway. Not a photo this time. Not a whisper. Flesh and blood. He was tall. Clean. Calm. You've been very noisy, he said, voice smooth like oil. I should have killed Kyoma the first time I heard her name. But I wanted to watch what she'd become. Nonso stepped forward. And what do you think she became? Okadigbo smiled darkly. A nuisance. Just as he raised the gun, the window behind him shattered. Kyoma jumped through it, rolling across the floor. In one motion, she swung the metal rod from her back and struck the gun out of his hand. Abuka stormed in from the hallway. The fight exploded, fists, glass, screams. Okadigbo was strong, but Kyoma fought like a woman who'd bled too much to be afraid anymore. With a final blow to his knee, he collapsed. They cuffed him with rope. He spat blood on the floor. Even if you kill me, others will rise. Kyoma leaned down close. We're not here to kill you. We're here to expose you. They took everything from that house, the photos, the files, the drives, the ledgers. They called a trusted contact from the regional media. That same night, every document was copied, scanned, and released. By morning, Okadigbo's face was on every screen. He wasn't a myth anymore. He was real. And his empire had cracks. Back at the safe house, Aurora opened her sketchbook. This time, she didn't draw the monster. She drew Kyoma leaping through a window. And behind her, girls. Hundreds of them. Running free. The video of Okadigbo's arrest spread like fire in dry Harmattan. Every blog, every radio talk, every phone screen carried his face, the face of a man who had for years lived untouched behind clean suits, fake charities, and smiling lies. And now, all of it was burning. But victories like this were never clean. By morning, the backlash came like thunder. Politicians who once called Kyoma the voice of the voiceless now whispered that she was reckless. Some police officers she had once worked with refused to return her calls. Donors pulled out. The safe house was labeled a political tool. And in the shadows, something worse moved. They had stirred a beast. The team met in the common room. Everyone looked exhausted, but nobody wanted to sit. The girls were upstairs, unaware of the chaos building outside. Nonso paced the floor. We did everything right. Everything. The evidence was solid. The media got it. They saw the files, the photos. So why are they acting like we are the problem? Kelechi sat at the edge of the table, fingers clenched. Because Okadigbo was never working alone. Kyoma nodded. They're protecting what he could expose. The network is wider than we thought. Higher. Uzoamaka leaned on the wall, arms folded. So what now? We just wait to be attacked from all sides. No, Kyoma said. Her voice didn't shake. Now we do what they never expect. Which is, we survive. Later that day, a white SUV with tinted windows rolled up to the compound. Kyoma watched from the window, tense, until she saw the face of the woman who stepped out. She hadn't seen her in 10 years. Onyiinyekai? The woman smiled, tiredly, gently. Long time, Kyoma. They embraced. It was quick, stiff. Too much unsaid. Onyiinyekai had once been a lawyer working with human rights causes. Now, she worked quietly, moving information between the cracks. I saw what you did, she said as they sat in the office. I also saw what they're doing to you. Kyoma nodded. It's not surprising. I'm here to help, Onyiinyekai said. But you have to move the girls. Kyoma's eyes darkened. Why? There's a raid being planned. They want to claim this place is a fraud. That you're trafficking the girls instead of saving them. Nonso swore under his breath. Kyoma stared at her old friend. And who told you? A senator's aide. His young. Idealistic. Stupid. But honest. Kyoma exhaled. How long do we have? 2 days. Maybe 1. By evening, the house had turned into a silent machine. Bags were packed. Shoes wrapped in nylon. Important documents copied, burned, hidden. Kyoma pulled Aurora aside. I need you to be strong again. I'm tired of being strong, Aurora whispered. I know, Kyoma said. That's why I'm asking. Aurora looked up at her, eyes fierce. Where are we going? A farm in Enugu. Quiet place. Safe people. Just for a while. What about you? Kyoma smiled. I'll be right behind you. But they both knew that wasn't true. That night, under darkness, 3 unmarked buses left the compound. Kyoma stayed behind with Kelechi and Uzoamaka. She knew if they left the house completely empty, it would send a signal. No, they had to act like things were normal. So the trap would spring. And the world would watch. Just before dawn, it happened. 3 black jeeps pulled up. Armed men in fake uniforms broke down the gate. Cameras were already rolling. A reporter stood outside shouting rehearsed lines about a child trafficking hideout. They pushed into the house. They found Kyoma in the middle of the kitchen, sipping tea. She looked at them once. Calm. Detached. "You're late," she said. A slap landed across her cheek. She didn't flinch. They dragged her outside. Cameras caught everything. Her arms behind her back. Her shirt stained. Blood on her lip. But what the world didn't know, what the cameras didn't show, was that Kelechi had been live-streaming everything from hidden angles. From the minute the black jeeps entered, to the staged evidence they planted in the pantry, to the forced confessions they whispered off-screen. Within hours, the footage hit the internet. And suddenly, the story flipped. Now it was them on the run. Kyoma was released 12 hours later. Bruised but not broken. The headlines changed. From activist accused to hero framed. But the cost? The safe house was gone. Nonso met her outside the station. His shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't slept. She stepped into the car, shut the door, and whispered, "Start the engine." As they pulled away from the station, she looked out at the city, alive, chaotic, watching. "Is it over?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "No. It's just beginning." In the hills of Enugu, Ada Aura sat beneath a mango tree, staring at the sunset. She had Kyoma's scarf wrapped around her neck, the only thing she took with her when she left. One of the younger girls, Ihuma, came and sat beside her. "Will she come?" Ada Aura nodded. "She always comes back." But deep inside, a new truth was growing. They couldn't always wait for Kyoma. They had to become like her. Even if it hurt. Even if it cost them everything.